Good morning, students. I welcome you to the second lecture in the course ENH 381, Unit 1. In this particular lesson, we will be reading about reading comprehension, which is a subpart of the title Reading and Listening Comprehension of this particular unit. The objective of this particular lesson is to make you understand the complex process of reading and how reading a text leads to comprehension. Besides this, to get you familiar with the factors which work as an impediment, as an obstacle in understanding the text that we read. As we are talking about reading different kinds of texts, if you reflect that we read such diverse variety of material. We read newspapers, we read magazines, we read pamphlets, we read storybooks. Then we also many a times indulge in reading journals and even some of the circulars which happen to get into our hands, right? Now, a thing to be kept in mind is that each and every text has its own importance in our lives, right? When we are reading a newspaper, our objective is what? Our objective is to generally have an idea of what's happening around the world, right? When we are reading a course book, our objective is to gain knowledge, right? And likewise, if we read some professional documents like reports, then our objective is to look at that particular text professionally. So keeping that point in mind, we can broadly classify the variety of texts that we read under three main headings. One is general text, which includes newspaper, novels, personal letters. Then second, we have academic texts. As the term itself says, that means it is related to the enhancement of academic knowledge. So we have textbooks, lecture notes, journals, and then we talk about professional texts. Like at the moment you are students, but after completing your studies, you will get into some profession. So there you have a specific documentation which you have to create as well as go through. Like we have reports, we have proposals and circulars. And all the three are primarily governed by the importance or the purpose of these respective texts. Now, likewise, we may say we can pin down certain important objectives behind reading a text. One could be to get an introductory idea of a text, means okay, like you generally do it with a newspaper. All right, what's the headlines? What happened today? What is the update on COVID? Which state is badly affected? Which country is taking measures? What are the measures which are being included? Now, what is the scenario of Indo-China, confrontation? So we are not reading much. We just going through the newspaper. These are certain headlines which are there on the front page of a newspaper. Then second is to discover the author's point of view. Now this primarily author or a writer, when you read an article, okay, or you read an editorial, what you want to know is that after all, what is being said by the writer? What is his point of view? And you must have observed, because you're in a habit of reading newspaper, that we have those columnists, okay, are the people who have a certain bent of mind and have a certain analytical or critical view. So when they are writing, okay, they are sharing with you a certain point of view. So when we have to know, like some of the editorials are published by journalists who are pro-government, and some are anti-government. So by reading their articles, you get to know one side of the story. So when you are inquisitive, or likewise you read a novel, you are the new generation is just mad after Chetan Bhagat, right? And definitely is a great writer. So when you are reading his novels, what will happen? You would like to know, oh, what is he trying to say? What is so new? So there your objective is to discover. All right. Then you have to obtain specific information. Specific information is, okay, what is the uh, what do you call it, your GDP at the moment? Okay. Then what is the position of India in the tally of worst affected nations? So you are focusing on a specific topic. So your objective is to get a specific information from the content which is there in front of you. Then you have to understand new changes and developments in a particular field. This we can do it because we want to keep ourselves abreast with what's happening around, right? So nowadays when we are tied in a situation where we cannot interact with people outside without technology, there what we are trying to do, we are trying to utilize the time by learning maximum, right? And finding out what's new, what's happening in the various fields of knowledge. And then we can also say to broaden one's outlook and understanding, right? So obviously this is, you want to keep yourself aware of the what's happening around the world. So your general awareness or your awareness in a particular field of learning, knowledge. Okay, so these could be the driving force or the main reasons which compel you or which motivate you or which drive you to read a certain kind of text. All right. Now, as I had told you that, as I had told, all right, as I had told you that reading is not something that happens at the drop of a hat. It is a proper system. It is a proper process. And when there is a process, that means there is a constant flow. All right. So you can look at the flow chart primarily, which tells you that reading process involves three stages. That is before reading, during reading, and the third part is after reading. All right. So we cannot say that, okay, a text is there, you have read and you claim to have read that particular text. No, there are lot many factors which go into your reading process. All right. Like you can see it on the screen. Before reading, what is it? Like suppose I want to read a novel by Chetan Bhagat. All right, I have read a couple before, or I have read the review. All right, so what is there is before reading, primarily I preview, means I had read earlier, so I know what kind of uh, novels does he write, right? Then I have a certain plan that if I read this, what particular, thing will I gain? Okay, now how will I go about with it? What I will read, how will it refresh my mind? I'm talking about the casual reading, all right? We are not talking about professional reading. But yes, I'm just taken an example in order to make you understand. So we have a certain plan. Yes, I will start from this particular chapter and then I will go through this. And if I like, I will read between the lines. All right. And then you set a purpose. That is, what is my purpose of reading or picking up Chetan Bhagat? That is, my purpose is to be relaxed, to know what is the attitude or the scenario of the present generation. All right. So all this is not happening something very consciously, but this is already being conditioned in our mind when we look at a particular text. All right. Then once you have picked up the book from the shelf and all this has happened already mentally, then you start to read, right? Now reading with a purpose. All right, you are not just trying to pick up and sit like if you are, having having a test and you pick up a textbook of another subject of which the test is not scheduled on that day. What will happen? Definitely you had no purpose and you waste your time also and energy.
So read with a purpose. When we pick up, we keep in mind how will it help us, right? And then try to connect with it. Now, it does not mean that we are using an electronic mode to connect to it. No, connect means what you're reading, it is getting registered in your mind because you are able to associate your previous knowledge or previous understanding or previous information related to that document in your mind. So it is again a constant process of connection which is being developed between the text and you, which is in front of you. Then we go through the reading process, and once we have done that reading process, after reading also immediately you can't say we shut the book and the reading is over. No, there is simultaneously something more which is happening. That is, here it is the text analysis also, which that means whatever you have read, you try to connect it to your memory. All right, then you reflect upon it, and then you, whatever area or whatever point is not very clear to you, you reread it. All right, so once you, the entire process of before, during and after is complete, then we call it you have completed the reading comprehension process. Okay, if you are not able to connect to the text, if you are not able to reflect after reading the text, that means you have not really done the reading in the right manner. Okay, so you can understand with the help of this chart that reading involves physical. That means obviously you will be reading the recognize, you'll try to recognize the words which are there by pronouncing them. All right, so there is a physical involvement, there is constantly a mental involvement as well. If your mind is not there, only the physical part is there, you open the book and sit in front of it, then you will not get the result which is expected out of that particular exercise. I hope I am clear to you. Otherwise, the chart is there. I think you should be able to clear your doubts by looking at the chart. All right.
Now we have to see and understand the real or the actual meaning of the word reading comprehension. Now, reading comprehension is a term which is developed by combining two words, independent words which have their own importance. One is reading. We have been talking all through about reading and reading process. So I don't think we need to speak on that anymore. The other word which is of greater importance is comprehension. So we should know what comprehension actually means. Comprehension is the ability to understand a written text or a verbal message. What does that primarily imply? That it is not merely a lip service. It is not just superficially a reading, but there is the retention and assimilation of the message which is being conveyed through the word symbols. All right, and that then we come to this particular point, then we can define and say reading comprehension refers to the ability to understand information presented in the written form. This skill will affect one's interpretation of implicit meaning of a text. All right, that is not that only superficial understanding is what is required when we say you are able to comprehend or you are able to understand that text. No, the underlying meaning, the hidden meaning should also be understood. Then only we can say you have understood a particular term or a concept in totality. There are many reasons for poor comprehension as well. And it is not something which is unknown. They are very obvious. Like one is inability to understand a word. All right. Now, when we talk about a word, it is not just merely the spellings of the word or the meaning of a word in isolation. No, it means the word which you are reading in a particular sentence, how does it function in that particular form or in that sentence. One is for sure the vocabulary. When we do not have a rich vocabulary, then we are not able to understand the text. All right. And then they talk about then when you are not able to understand a sentence. What is a sentence? It is a string or a chain of words which are put together to convey a specific meaning. So you have already read in your school and in your previous classes that sentences are of different kinds, interrogative, assertive, right? So the meaning of that particular sentence is conveyed through the selection of the words, right? When it is an interrogative sentence, automatically there is a question mark and it starts with WH word. So when you do not understand a sentence and its significance in that context, then also you tend to get misled. Likewise, inability to understand the organization of a text. Now, organization means that is when you are not familiar with the structure of that particular document. Like if you are not in a habit of reading newspaper daily, you will not know how to identify a specific information in the newspaper. Like generally there is a sports section separate, there is an editorial section separate, then there is just general updates on the front page, that there are different sections. If you are not familiar with the structure of the newspaper, you will take longer time to find it. And by the time it could be that you might develop disinterested attitude. So that can also hamper your comprehension. And then lastly, which is of greater importance, that is lack of interest or concentration, right? Like many of us have this habit of getting distracted very soon. We lack a certain level of concentration. So if we get a text to read which is just right or in accordance with the level of concentration we have, then okay, we understand. But as soon as that particular time exceeds, then our concentration also tends to decline. As a result, our understanding gets blurred. Likewise, lack of interest. Like we have texts which are of our interest, like especially boys are very much into sports, cars, races, right? Whereas the girls are more interested in fashion, then what do you call it, drama, all these, then singing, dancing. So obviously the area of interest also develops or helps in developing concentration, right? So these are some of the very actual and very basic reasons for not being able to understand. All right. I think you have understood the concept of reading comprehension. Now, just as a recap, or let us just summarize the main points that we have discussed in this particular lesson. First thing is that what is reading comprehension? Reading comprehension is the understanding of a written text, because reading is done on the basis of the text that is presented before us. So therefore, we will say that it is the comprehension or understanding of a written text. Secondly, understanding of the text depends on various factors. Then we have also talked about the various factors which facilitate in the understanding of a respective text. Then we have talked about reading is a process and involves many mental and physical faculties. So it is not just a thing that happens or it is something very superficial. No. When we read, we have to understand the explicit as well as the implicit meaning, and which requires not only your physical presence but also your mental concentration. And then through knowledge of language, only the understanding of a text is possible. That is, comprehension is only possible if we have a command on the language. That's why you are time and time again told try to develop reading habits. That is, to read different kinds of texts so that you get accustomed and attuned to the various kinds of vocabulary exercises and vocabulary related to certain situations which will enrich your understanding of any kind of text when brought in front of you. All right. So I think this lesson has made you understand the basic concept related to reading comprehension. Thank you very much